Determinism is the idea that the past determines a unique future. Is there more than one way that the world can go on from any given instant of time, like a road forking, or is there just one way? If there's just one way the world can go on, well, that's determinism. Students in philosophy courses are very upset by any suggestion that they don't have free will. But I think there are some arguments that can be given in that respect. Arguments that might show, for example, that morality, that is right and wrong, would be out of place in a world in which nobody had free will. That any moral judgments that you might want to make, say Hitler shouldn't have behaved the way he did, which most people would think, to put it mildly, is a correct judgment, couldn't be true in a world in which there was no free will. Because after all, if Hitler had no alternative, how can you blame him for choosing the alternative, the one single alternative he had?
In the 17th century, Sir Isaac Newton's theory of mechanics proposed that all objects made up of material particles are governed in their behavior by the universal laws of motion and attraction. Some thinkers were anxious to transfer these laws from physics to human behavior.
The scientific advances of the 16th and 17th century rendered it plausible that causal determinism is true. As you know, causal determinism is the doctrine that everything is in principle predictable and explainable in advance, so that everything flows from causal sequences that originally began outside of human agents.
It's a problem which certainly worried 17th century philosophers, that if the human mind just were the brain, and that if it operated in a more or less mechanical way, then there'd be no room for human spontaneity, not just for creativity, but there'd be no room for freedom of action.
If determinism is true, then the present state of the world is a consequence of two things. A, the way the world was at some time in the past, say 1 billion years ago, and B, the laws of nature, or the laws of physics. Now, neither of these things is anything I have any choice about. If these two things together are sufficient for every movement, every action, every word that's in any way any kind of production of mind during my life, then it's hard to see how we can have such a thing as a free choice.
The standard compatibilist says the only freedom you need is the freedom to control your actions by your desires. As long as you can do what you want to do, you've got all the freedom you need and you're responsible for your actions. Then you think, but if my desires are determined, then I'm not really free. I'm not really in control. And that leads you back again to thinking determinism must be incompatible with free will because you want your desires not to be determined.
What have atoms got to do with me? What have the laws of nature that govern the atoms got to do with me? Well, you're made of atoms, aren't you? Or if you think you're not, at any rate, your body is made of atoms. So if there's only one possible sequence of movements for these atoms that make you up in the future, then there's only one possible sequence of movements for you. However the mental causes, the beliefs and the desires and the memories work out in your behavior, they have to be strictly consistent with this one possible sequence of movements that these atoms are going to go through.